Story 1. It started with the onions. Not the crying, but the way they bled black tears onto the cutting board as I chopped. We'd just moved into this Chicago high-rise, Jake and me, chasing city dreams in our shiny new apartment. Dusk painted the windows orange, and the chili was supposed to be our first home-cooked meal here. Perfect, right? But then the fridge began to hum. I'm Emily Rose Harlan, and my fridge knows my middle name. At first, it was just louder than usual, a low buzz, like a distant chant from the street below. Jake grinned, wiping his hands on his jeans. AC kicking in, babe. These old buildings. He yanked open the fridge door for the ground beef. A blast of icy air hit us, carrying a whisper, soft, like a kid murmuring in the next room. Jake Michael Harlan. My knife froze mid-chop. Jake blinked. Wind through the vents, hear that? But I swear it giggled. My heart skipped. Emily Rose Harlan. Full names. No one called us that, not even our parents. We laughed it off, nerves from the move, but my onions were wilting in my palms, turning slimy and gray, like they'd been dead for days. Jake shrugged and grabbed the beef pack. Dinner's calling. That's when the whisper sharpened. No more chant. Clear words now, slicing the air. Jake cheats on Tuesdays with her. My stomach dropped. He froze, beef slipping from his fingers. What the hell? His face went white. I stared at him. Tuesdays? The gym excuses? The late nights? He stammered. Emily, it's nothing. Emily Rose Harlan steals. Lipstick from the mall, candy as a teen, arrested at 16. Secrets spilled like spoiled milk. My cheeks burned. Yeah, I'd shoplifted once, got caught, record expunged. No one knew. Not Jake. The fridge light flickered, casting long shadows across the kitchen island. Veggies in the bowl shriveled, skins cracking open to reveal wriggling maggots. The air smelled wrong, rotten meat mixed with baby powder. Shut it! Jake slammed the door, but it bounced back open, humming louder, a nursery rhyme twisted into menace. Come play, family. We backed away, but the door swung wide on its own. Jake lunged to close it again. Stupid move. It snapped shut on his arm, metal biting deep. Blood sprayed the white door. He screamed, yanking hard. Emily, help! I grabbed a knife, wedged it in, prying. No use. From inside came pale hands, small, child-sized, nails like broken porcelain. They wrapped his wrist, tugging him deeper into the black void. Jake! His body jerked, half in, half out, legs kicking wildly. The fridge roared now, a monster's growl. Let him go! I pounded the door, his screams muffled into gurgles, wet and fading. Then silence, just the hum. I stumbled back, breath ragged. The fridge light pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating. Photos. Taped inside on the shelves, fluttering in the cold wind. Us as kids. Me at 8. Pigtails. Gap-toothed smile. Standing in a park I'd never visited. Jake at 10, fishing by a lake. Freckles I'd never noticed on his cheeks. Family shots, too. Us with parents we didn't recognize. Holidays in houses we'd never owned. They multiplied, peeling from shadows, sticking to the glass. Hundreds curling at edges like old Polaroids. A tiny voice piped up, gleeful. Mommy? Daddy? Dinner's ready? The door creaked open an inch. Jake's hand flopped out, limp, fingers twitching, covered in frost, etched with tiny handprints. I slammed it shut, barricading with chairs, but the hum laughed. Lights dimmed, the whole kitchen chilled, frost creeping up cabinets. I ran for my phone, but it was dead. Windows locked tight, no balcony escape. The fridge door rattled, bulging outward. Photos rained down, now color prints of today. Us chopping onions, smiling. Future ones too, our unborn kids, faces blurred, mouths open in silent screams. Crack. The seal broke. Cold fog billowed out, carrying Jake's voice, distorted. Emily, join us. Family forever. Pale arms emerged, more now, reaching. I swung the knife, slicing one. It bled black ichor, reforming instantly. They grabbed my ankles, pulling me down. My face pressed to the floor, nose inches from the open door. Inside, endless dark, but eyes glowed. Dozens. Children's eyes. All Jake's brown, all mine green. Photos swirled like a tornado, showing our lives rewritten. Wedding with ghost parents. Babies in cribs that smelled of decay. I kicked free, scrambling up. But the fridge expanded, swallowing counter space, walls groaning. City lights outside winked out, plunging us into night. The chant returned. Jake Michael Harlan, Emily Rose Harlan, come home. Last thing I saw before the hands dragged me in, a final photo. Us as toddlers, identical twins, hand in hand. But we weren't twins. Never were. Now I hum with it, in the dark, waiting for the next couple. Chili's almost ready. Story 2. There's a third person in my kitchen, chopping in perfect sync with us. But my husband swears he didn't invite anyone. Newlyweds Ryan and me, Sophia Grant, firing up the oven in our Brooklyn loft. Roast chicken for date night, city skyline glowing through floor-to-ceiling windows at dusk. Smells of herbs and promise. Normal bliss, until the shadows stretched wrong. They pulled long from the orange skyline, twisting across the island like fingers. Ryan paused mid-chop, knife hovering over carrots. Soph, you see that? A third silhouette loomed beside us, tall, faceless, black as ink. Its knife rose and fell in perfect mimicry of Ryan's strokes. Thwack, thwack. No face, just void where eyes should be. I blinked hard. Just lights, babe. But a cold hand clamped mine, icy, bony, guiding my blade faster, deeper into potatoes. Slices flew, paper thin, blood from my thumb unnoticed. The shadow leaned in, breath like old smoke. Voice rasped in an old-timey accent like Grandma's radio shows. Add the heart next, dearie. We froze. Ryan laughed nervously. Alexa glitch? But our chicken in the sink thawed bloodlessly, skin pale, unnatural. He peeled it back. Inside, no bones. A human heart pulsed wetly, veins twitching. What the fuck? Ryan dropped it. It plopped, beating steady on the counter. The shadow chuckled. Grandma's recipe, from her book. Ryan's eyes widened. His grandma's cookbook sat on the shelf, yellowed pages we'd never opened. It flipped open alone, to a stained page. Roast heart of the betrayer. Humming started, faint tune, familiar yet forgotten. Ryan's family lullaby. Ryan? My voice shook. The cold hand squeezed, forcing my knife toward the heart. Shadows thickened, oven preheating to inferno roar. City lights outside dimmed, like watching us. He lunged at the shadow, yelling, "Get out!" Fist swung through smoke, but it poured into him, inky smoke funneling down his throat. He gagged, body jerking, eyes blackened, whites gone, pure void. Then he smiled, not his smile. Time to cook, Sophia. Humming swelled, that damn tune from his grandma's book. He grabbed his knife, carving air like a surgeon. Turned on me. Blade flashed surgical precision, slicing my sleeve clean off, nicking skin. Blood welled hot. Ryan? Stop. Not Ryan anymore, dearie. Old voice from his mouth. Shadow Chef fully merged. He pinned me to the island, knife tracing my ribs. Grandma taught me. Betrayers get carved. Visions hit. His grandma's kitchen, 1920s Brooklyn. She poisoned rivals, baked their hearts. Family curse, passed in blood and recipes. I kicked free, grabbing a pan, swung hard, clang off his head. He barely flinched, eyes gleaming black. Chicken heart leaped from counter, burrowing into his chest with a squelch. He laughed, stronger, humming louder, forcing my hand back to chopping. Me now, slicing veggies into my own finger rhythm. Oven door flew open, flames licking. Shadows everywhere, mimicking us multiply, dozens chopping phantom meat. Loft shrank, walls closing. His blade nicked my arm deep. Heart next. Yours. I bolted for the door, locked, windows sealed, phone dead. He advanced, humming grandma's tune. Slice and dice, heart so nice, knife plunged. I twisted, grazed my side, ribs cracking. Pain exploded. He carved slow, precise, peeling skin like onion layers. Join the recipe, wife. Last vision, endless generations, shadow chefs in every kitchen, humming. My heart ripped free, pulsing in his hand, stuffed into the chicken with mine. Oven swallowed it whole. Now I hum too, in the dark loft, chopping for the next newlyweds, hearts almost ready. Story 3. My wife's knife hand moved on its own tonight, guided by something cold that whispered my dead grandma's recipes. Sophia and me, newlyweds in our Brooklyn loft, prepping roast chicken as the city skyline glowed dusk orange through the windows. Oven humming warm, our first real meal here. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the kitchen island, like they were reaching. I chopped carrots, swearing I saw a third silhouette beside us, tall, faceless, void black. Its knife matched my strokes perfectly. Thud, thud. Soph, there's someone here. She shook her head, focused on potatoes, but her face twisted. Cold hand gripped hers, I could tell. Invisible, forcing her blade faster, deeper. Slices flew razor thin, blood beating unnoticed. The shadow leaned close. Old-timey accent rasped, like Grandma's voice from faded tapes. Add the heart next, boy. We both heard it. Sophia gasped. Our chicken in the sink thawed wrong. No drip, skin ghostly white. I peeled it open. Inside, a human heart pulsed, veins throbbing alive. Soph, run. It quivered on the counter, syncing with my heartbeat. Grandma's cookbook flipped open on the shelf, pages we'd ignored, stained with brown spots. Humming started low, that forgotten family tune she sang while baking. Shadow giggled. Recipe time. I lunged, tackling empty air where it stood. Smoke poured, inky cold slamming into my chest. It burned down my throat, filling lungs. I coughed black. Sophia screamed. My vision blackened at edges, eyes turned void when I blinked. Power surged. Hunger. Not me anymore. Grandma's shadow chef, wearing my skin. Perfect vessel. It hummed through my lips. Sophia backed away, pan raised. Silly girl. I grabbed my knife, steady now, surgical sharp. Turned on her. Heart next, dearie. Blade danced precise, carving her sleeve off clean, nicking arm. Blood welled pretty like sauce reduction. She swung the pan, clang off my skull. Felt nothing. Chicken heart leaped, burrowing into my ribs with wet pop. Beat stronger, mine now. Humming swelled. Chop and stir, flesh so tender. Grandma's tune, curse from her cookbook. Loft shadows multiplied. Phantom chefs chopping ghosts. City lights flickered out, oven roaring hell hot. Sophia bolted for the door, locked tight. Windows fogged blood red. Ryan, fight it. Old voice. Visions flooded. Grandma's kitchen, 1920s. She carved lovers who betrayed, baked hearts into pies, fed to families, passed the shadow in her final recipe, waiting for bloodkin like me. Knife flashed, sliced her side deep, ribs peeking white. She crumpled, gasping. Please. I pinned her gentle blade-tracing collarbone. Join the feast. Peeled skin slow, layers like pastry dough, heart exposed, pulsing frantic. Oven door yawned. I stuffed her in, whole, curled fetal. Flames licked, cooking slow. Her screams tuned the hum perfect. Now I wait alone. Humming. Cookbook open to next page. For the next newlyweds. Chicken's almost done. Story 4. The secret to a perfect pizza crust is supposed to be the yeast, a living thing that breathes and grows. But I never realized that life could be so hungry. We were in our Denver condo, high above the city lights, trying to have one of those perfect family nights. Mike was humming a song while he tossed flour onto the marble island. Lily was laughing, and Noah was trying to make a dough man with raisins for eyes. The kitchen smelled of yeast and warm honey. It was supposed to be a memory we'd cherish. Instead, it was the beginning of our digestion. It's growing fast, Mike, Karen said, her voice tilting with a hint of concern. She was right. The bowl of dough sat in the center of the island, but it wasn't just rising, it was heaving. It bubbled with a wet, rhythmic sound, like a heavy lung struggling for air. Within seconds, the dough breached the rim of the stainless steel bowl, spilling over the sides in thick, pale folds. It didn't fall to the floor. It crawled across the counter, spreading like a slow-motion explosion of beige flesh. "Cool," Noah whispered, reaching out. "It's like slime." "Don't touch it, Noah," I said, but it was too late. Lily, always the curious one, poked a finger into the center of the mass. The dough didn't just yield, it reacted. Sticky, translucent strands erupted from the puncture, lashing around her finger like tiny pale tentacles. Lily gasped, trying to pull back, but the dough held firm. It was strong, impossibly strong. It began to reel her in, her small hand disappearing into the doughy bulk. "Dad, it's got me!" she screamed. I grabbed a meat cleaver from the magnetic strip. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. I swung the blade down, hacking through the strands connecting the mass to my daughter. The blade buried itself in the dough with a wet thud, and for a second, Lily was free. But the dough didn't bleed. It sighed. The gashes I had made simply folded back into themselves, the mass reforming and growing larger with every second. Then the horror truly began. The dough started to shape itself. From the amorphous mound, 4 distinct shapes began to rise. They were crude, faceless parodies of us. Doughy limbs, rounded torsos, heads without eyes. They mimicked our heights, our stances, and then they spoke. The sound didn't come from mouths. It was the sound of air escaping rising bread, but the words were unmistakable. "Karen," the largest shape hissed, its voice a sickening echo of my own. "The doctor was wrong. You weren't empty because of luck. You were empty because you were meant to be replaced." Karen's face went white. It was her deepest fear, the infertility that had haunted her for years before we adopted the kids. The smaller shape turned toward Noah. "They don't just trip you in the hallway, Noah. They hate you. They'll never stop." "How does it know?" Noah sobbed, backing away into the stovetop. The mass was no longer just on the counter. It had flowed into the cracks of the kitchen, engulfing the oven. The heating elements clicked on, the red glow illuminating the dough from within. It wasn't burning. It was baking. The smell of fresh bread turned into the stench of charred hair and old sweat. The dough stretched over the oven door, forming a giant, screaming face that took up the entire wall. The mouth was a jagged hole of raw heat. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Karen's hand. We bolted for the hallway, but the condo felt like it was stretching. The walls were pulsing. Before we could reach the front door, the dough face in the kitchen let out a roar of steam. The oven door shattered, and thick, vine-like tendrils of baked crust and raw dough shot through the air. They moved like snakes. A vine wrapped around Lily's waist, hoisting her into the air. Another snagged my ankle, slamming me to the floor. We were being pulled back toward the kitchen, toward that giant, screaming face. "No, please!" Karen screamed as she was dragged across the hardwood. The dough didn't want to kill us quickly. It wanted us to participate. The vines forced our mouths open. Small, hot clumps of the dough, our own risen flesh, shaped like us, tasting of our own salt, were shoved down our throats. It was thick, dry, and tasted of ancient dust. "Eat," the house seemed to whisper. "Be whole. Be one." I looked at my family one last time. We were being pinned to the floor, the dough vines sewing us into the very fabric of the kitchen. We were becoming the ingredients for a meal that would never end. As the dough began to cover my eyes, the last thing I saw was the table being set by hands made of bread, waiting for us to join the feast forever. Story 5. They say the kitchen is the heart of the home, but in our Miami condo, the heart has started to beat, and it sounds like a death rattle. It was supposed to be a quiet Tuesday, just Alex and me, 2 empty nesters finally enjoying the silence of 20 stories above the bay. The smell of searing ribeye filled the air, a rich, fatty aroma that promised a perfect evening. Alex reached for the tongs, his face flushed from the heat of the stove. "We're out of peppercorns," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the sizzling steak. "Check the back of the pantry, Jordan." I stepped into the walk-in pantry, a spacious closet we'd filled with expensive oils and exotic grains. The moment my heel crossed the threshold, the heavy oak door swung shut with a violent thud. The handle didn't just lock, it vanished, leaving a smooth, unbroken surface of wood. The overhead light flickered once, twice, and then settled into a sickly, jaundiced yellow. "Alex!" I hammered on the door. "The door is stuck." I heard him pull at the other side, his muffled grunts turning into panicked heaves. Then, the flickering light stayed on, and I saw that the shelves had changed. Our neatly organized rows of organic pasta and sea salt were gone. In their place sat hundreds of identical glass jars, filled with a murky, translucent brine. I leaned in, my breath fogging the glass. Inside the nearest jar, 3 human eyes floated, bobbing gently. They weren't just random eyes, they were blue, exactly like mine. The label underneath, written in elegant looping script, read, "Wife's Regrets." Beside it, a larger jar held a shriveled, blackened tongue. The label read, "Husband's Lies." Suddenly, a voice vibrated through the very studs of the walls. It wasn't a human voice. It sounded like the grinding of stones and the wet slap of meat. Hing at it, his fingernails snapping against the wood. "And Jordan," the voice whispered, the shelves rattling as it spoke. 3 empty cradles. 3 secrets buried in the clinic trash, while you told him it was just bad luck. Regret is a bitter seasoning, isn't it? Fear turned my blood to slush. I backed away, but the pantry felt smaller. The walls were closer than they had been seconds ago. On the middle shelf, a jar of cayenne pepper spontaneously ignited. A small, hungry flame leapt onto my silk blouse. I screamed, batting at my chest, but as I opened my mouth, a heavy, invisible force shoved a handful of dry, uncooked rice into my throat. I gagged, falling to my knees. It felt like a phantom hand was grabbing rice by the fistful from an open sack, jamming it past my teeth. I looked over and saw the shadow of a figure pinning Alex against the wall, or what used to be the door. He was being force-fed too, his cheeks bulging, his eyes wide and bloodshot as he choked on the dry grains. The heat in the small room became unbearable. The spices on the shelves began to pop and explode, raining down stinging powders. Turmeric, chili, mustard, that burned our eyes and blistered our skin. The flames licked at our clothes, but we couldn't move to put them out. We were being stuffed like turkeys for a feast. Then, the walls began to move. They didn't just slide, they pulsed. The drywall felt soft and warm, like the lining of a giant throat. The ceiling lowered, forcing us to crouch, then crawl. I felt the ribs of the house squeezing my lungs. The pantry was shrinking, compacting us, folding our limbs into impossible angles. I looked at Alex. His skin was turning a pale, waxy gray, similar to the brine in the jars. He was being pressed into the floor, his body softening, his bones snapping with the sound of dry kindling. I felt my own spine give way as the room became no larger than a shipping crate. We weren't people anymore. We were ingredients. I saw a fresh jar materialize on the shrinking floor in front of me. It was empty, waiting. The last thing I felt was the cold glass pressing against my face as the house gulped us down. Tonight, the new owners will move in. They'll admire the granite countertops and the view of the ocean. They'll hear a faint rhythmic scratching coming from the air vents, a sound they'll dismiss as the building's settling. But when they get hungry and open the pantry door, they'll find us. We'll be sitting on the shelf, pickled and silent, waiting to be the secret ingredient in their very last meal. Story 6. The taco shells were crisp, the beef was browning in the pan, and for a fleeting moment, we were just a normal family in a ranch-style house in Austin. But then the air turned to ice, and I realized we weren't the only ones waiting for dinner. The humidity of the Texas evening usually pressed against the windows, but inside, a different kind of pressure was building. I stood at the stove, wooden spoon in hand, while Natalie set the napkins. Ava was scrolling on her phone, and Tyler was complaining about his math homework. It was domestic bliss until the kitchen chairs scraped against the linoleum simultaneously. They didn't knock, they didn't break in, they simply were. Seated at our table were 4 translucent figures, bathed in a sickly sepia-toned light. They wore the stiff, pressed clothing of the 1950s, a father in a narrow tie, a mother with a pearl necklace, and 2 children whose eyes were nothing but hollow, flickering shadows. They sat perfectly upright, their hands folded. Then, with a slow, synchronized grace, The ghostly mother reached out and began passing a stack of shimmering, translucent tortillas to her husband. "Chris?" Natalie's voice was a thin wire of terror. She was frozen, clutching a stack of plates. I tried to drop the spoon, but my fingers wouldn't open. A violent, icy tug jerked my shoulder back. My body was no longer mine. My legs marched me away from the stove and toward the corner of the pantry. My own hand, acting like a puppet on a string, reached down and ripped up a loose floorboard I had never noticed before. Beneath the wood sat a heavy, tarnished silver urn. I watched in silent horror as my hand unscrewed the lid. Inside wasn't just dust. It was a gray, gritty powder that smelled of copper and old basement. I walked back to the stove. With a sickeningly delicate motion, my fingers pinched the remains of the house's original owners and sprinkled them over the sizzling beef. I was seasoning our dinner with the dead. "Stop it, Dad! What are you doing?" Tyler screamed, trying to stand up. He couldn't. The ghost son, a boy who looked no older than 14, tilted his head. Tyler's jaw suddenly dropped open, clicking audibly. Ava's eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. They weren't screaming anymore. They were panting. The ghostly father looked at me and smiled. His teeth were like jagged pieces of broken china. I watched, a prisoner in my own skin, as my hands scooped the seasoned meat into bowls and placed them in front of my children. It wasn't cooked anymore. The moment the ashes touched the pan, the beef had turned back into raw, pulsing muscle. It was wet, it was cold, and it was moving. "Eat," the ghostly mother whispered. The sound wasn't a voice, it was the rustle of dead leaves. Ava and Tyler grabbed the meat with their bare hands. They stuffed the wriggling, raw clumps into their mouths, their throats bulging as they swallowed without chewing. Tyler's stomach began to distend, stretching his shirt tight. I could see something moving under his skin, small, frantic bumps pushing outward. The meat was multiplying inside them, filling them up from the inside out. Natalie backed away, hitting the kitchen cabinets. In her panic, she knocked over a stack of old cookbooks, revealing a hidden compartment built into the back of the shelf. A single, glossy photograph fell out. She picked it up, her hands shaking so violently the paper rattled. It was a crime scene photo, dated October 1958. It showed this very kitchen, but the floor was a lake of black blood. The family at the table, the ones sitting there now, were slumped over their plates, their throats opened like second mouths. They had been murdered mid-meal, their dinner interrupted by a violence so sudden they hadn't even finished their prayers. The translucent father stood up. He was taller than he looked while seated, his head nearly touching the ceiling. He picked up the carving knife Natalie had left on the counter. The blade, once stainless steel, turned a rusted, pitted brown in his spectral grip. "The house is hungry," he hissed. The translucent mother stood too, her ghostly fingers reaching out to stroke Natalie's cheek. "We've waited so long for a full set. 4 for 4. A perfect trade." The tablecloth, which had been a clean white linen, began to darken. A deep, wet crimson bloomed from the center, spreading like an ink blot. It dripped off the edges, splashing onto our shoes. The smell of the city sprawl outside. The car exhaust and the blooming jasmine was gone, replaced by the suffocating stench of an open grave. The ghosts leaned in, their knives rising in unison. They weren't just haunting us, they were inviting us. "Join dinner," they chimed, their voices merging into a single dissonant chord. "Join dinner forever." As the blade descended toward my throat, I looked at my children. They weren't Tyler and Ava anymore. They were pale, their eyes were fading into silver, and they were reaching for their own forks. The stain on the floor was no longer just ink or blood. It was our future, and the table was finally set. For more stories like this, share and subscribe Goofy Horror.